Let's turn that on. Hi, Danville. Alan Shields here, Chief of Police for the town, and we are 10-8 and in service, which means we're here to make people's lives better, and we do that by safeguarding the lives, rights, and property of everyone we serve. Thank you all for joining me. This is a live show, so I put it in the chat for Facebook, but I will be checking both Facebook and YouTube. So if you have a question and you throw it in the chat, I will try my best to answer it during the show. I will also monitor the chat for probably about 10 or so minutes after the show to kind of clean up any questions that came up during the show. And one of the questions that, let me say, the final thought for tonight was actually brought about by a question that was asked a day after a video a couple weeks ago. I wanted to make a whole segment on it. We've covered it before, but that'll be our final thought. So make sure you stick into that because it was a very good question. We're going to cover the blotter. We're going to cover the burglaries. We're going to talk about information and how it's released to citizens. And then we'll cover our final thought. But we have a great program here. If you're really interested in what it is that the police department does to serve the community, you can come join us. It's starting March 22nd. There is a link in the description to the page, and you can fill out the application, send it in, and we can get you enrolled. This class is a 7-week class. It goes Wednesday night from 6 to 9 every night, 2 Saturdays. It is a lot of fun, but it's fun with a purpose. And the purpose is for us to open our doors to show you everything it is that we do to serve the community, to serve all of you. And then also get feedback from all of you on what we can do to better serve the community. So we'd love your participation and support in that. In addition, we've got 2 links. These are evergreen links where they're going to be at the beginning and end of every show because they are that important. And that is our FEMA All Hazards Guide. These are for those low frequency, so they don't happen often, but high risk events. And what we want to do is have you prepared so that should an incident occur, right now we're featuring wildfires, should a wildfire occur, there are steps you can do today while it's still moist and damp outside to prepare so that if a wildfire happens, you are better prepared to both physically survive and have your property survive during the event. And then it gives you tips on what to do after these events as well. So if you look at wildfire, it does talk about what you can do, what the most common causes of starting them are, what you can do to be prepared, and how you're going to receive information. So there's a lot of good information there. In addition to that, we want people to sign up for the Contra Costa Sheriff Community Warning System. That's an opt-in system, and we want you to download the Wildfire Preparedness and Evacuation Guide. The opt-in system for Community Warning System, you can choose to receive alerts via your phone, email, however you'd like to get it. But if we have a significant major event, in addition to Nixle, which most of you probably have already signed up for, we will use the Community Warning System. If you haven't used Nixle or don't know what it is, simply send a text message to 888-777, and in the subject box, just put your zip code. So 94526 if you're Danville, 94506 if you're the east side of Danville. And anytime we send out alert saying the road's closed, fire, evacuating an area, that is one of the 2 platforms we're going to use. We're going to use that, and we're going to use our community warning system. All right. So as always, this is a live show. What I'm going to encourage you, ask questions in the chat. If you ask them, I will monitor both, and I will work to respond those. Oh, so Sue has a good question. So Sue is talking about the Citizens Academy. She says, the only thing I maybe would have liked to be covered in the class maybe would have been CPR, to have someone come in and go over CPR. So Sue, that's a good question. And what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to look up, because we do have resources, not we as in the town, but we in the region, for CPR. And maybe that's something we can do. It would necessitate adding an entire day to the course to cover that. But we'll check that out. And so if you like Sue, and it looks like Debbie has that as well, if you like Sue and Debbie's idea and affirmation to that idea, go ahead and throw it in the chat and let us know. Let's do some voting and say, hey, we'd like to see that added to the Citizens Academy class. At the end of the class, we take a small poll. Usually I do it personally, and I say, what would you like? And there's only 2 real questions. What would you like changed about the Academy, either added or removed? And then what can we do to better improve service to the town? And so that's what we do there. All right, so communitycrimemap.com. A lot of times people will ask me, and they'll say, you know, I'll be at Pete's Coffee or something, or we'll be at a community meeting, and they'll say, last night I felt really silly because someone said, how many burglaries occurred in my neighborhood? and I didn't have the exact number, which frankly I should have. But if you ever want to know specifically what's happening in your neighborhood, you can always go to communitycrimemap.com. And in there, you can look up just your area. You look at the entire town of Danville, for that matter, the entire county, whatever the sheriff's office covers. And we upload our calls there several times a day. And so you can get them. And you can also get the sexual offender. Okay. So now I think we've got sound, right? So I'm not sure what happened with the sound there. I think maybe I must have hit the little mute button. I'm going to apologize. I'm actually going to rerun it, and I'm going to start right back over with our collision list. So I apologize if some of this is redundant, but I don't know exactly where the sound cut off at. Sue and Debbie, thanks a lot for letting me know that the sound had cut out. All right. So these are the collision stats, January 30th through February 5th. On the 31st, we had 2 collisions. We had a property damage collision in the Costco parking lot, and then we had an injury collision in the San Ramon Valley High School parking lot, and that was between 2 cars. On the 2nd, we had 1 hit and run collision on Camino Tass near Liverpool, and this is where a car driving on Camino Tass Sahara left the roadway, hit a few signs, and then ended up leaving the scene. Then on the 3rd, we had 3 different collisions. We had an injury collision on Railroad, and that was early in the morning. A 15-year-old was hit by a car. And then we had a hit-and-run non-injury collision where mailboxes were run over, and that was on Meadow Lake Way. And then a hit-and-run non-injury collision, and this was in the parking lot of Wells Fargo downtown on San Ramon Valley Boulevard. On the 5th, we had another hit-and-run, and it was reported on the 5th, but it actually occurred the night of the 4th, and that was on El Recon Road, and that was a vehicle versus a pedestrian. It occurred later in the night, and when the person discovered that they had some minor pains, they called us to make that report. All right, so I'm kind of looking at the chat here. I want to make sure I didn't miss anything on the... Okay. All right, so Debbie and Sue, again, thank you for letting me know about the sound there. All right, so on to the crime. So a little bit less crime than last week, but frankly, not favorable crime at all. And I'll go in a little more detail on that. But on the 30th, we had a stolen package from the porch on the 800 block of Camino Ramon. And then we had a commercial theft of merchandise from the CVS on San Ramon Valley Boulevard. And on the 31st, we had a pretty significant burglary of a home on Wood Ranch Circle. And that was where they actually entered the home portion and stole property. On the 1st, we had a theft of bicycles from the garage on Richard Lane. That is considered a residential burglary. They don't have to go in the house. They just have to enter a structure. On the 2nd, there were stolen packages from the porch on Merrily Place. And then on the 5th, there was a theft from a vehicle. And this is a little interesting. The theft from the vehicle then turned into the garage door opener was in there, and they entered the garage, and they did that on Longview Circle, and they were able to take some bicycles from the garage. So we have talked about it in the past. I'm going to cover it again in a future segment, but securing your garage, there's some things that you can do to secure your garage. You can have secondary locks installed so that when you hit your garage door opener, those locks pull away from the track, and that allows your door to go up. What that helps defeat is if someone were to break the window of your garage and pull the emergency handle, they would be able to just simply lift your door up because it would be free from the motor. And so the locks on the side provides a secondary method so that people can't do it. But none of that really works if you've got your little remote in your car and people push the button and and it goes up. So what we recommend is don't leave your remote even concealed in your car. A lot of people tend to leave it maybe in a bag or on their purse, something like that. The other thing is if it's programmed into your car and you park your car outside, be aware that it may actually operate when your keys aren't in the car, the doors are locked, all of that. So we don't recommend programming that unless you are 100% sure that it's non-functioning when the vehicle is stopped, parked, and still. And because we do see that as well. On the burglaries, so we do have, if you think about it, we had 3 this week, right? And so some of them were entering garages, which is technically a burglary because they've entered a structure with the intent to commit a theft or a felony. When they enter the home, though, that's concerning because that's even going further into the home. So 3 burglaries. Think about this. All of 2021, I don't have 22 numbers finalized yet, but for all of 2021, we only had 28 total burglaries. So that's entering homes, businesses, and what we would call miscellaneous burglary. So that's entering any structure. That could be a shed in a backyard. It could be a shed behind a business, any structure with the intent to commit a theft or felony. And in 1 week, we had 3 of them. So that is not good by the numbers. So that is something that we take serious. If you want to know how we investigate those crimes, when they're reported to us, all burglaries do get a detective assigned to them. So not only does a patrol officer or a team of officers go out and work that case as it happens, it also gets assigned to a detective who has even further training and, frankly, the time to do the serious follow-up needed to work and solve one of those cases. So that is that. So if you were on Nextdoor, you probably know there was a lot of information that went out about one of the burglaries that happened. And that is not information that comes from the police department. We are very careful and calculated in the way that we release information. The information that we released is widely governed by the government code. It's presumed to be public record, and then they apply exceptions. And one of the biggest exceptions that we lean on quite a bit is that it is a record of investigation, and that we don't want to release something that would harm the case or not allow us to preserve evidence. So what I want to cover is how we release information and why it is so important that we follow the process that we do. When a crime occurs, and we play the principles at the beginning of every show, but when the crime occurs, we understand that Pelian principle, number 7, where the people are the police and the police are the people. And the reason I bring that up right now is it's important that you know that if you're a victim of a crime, the Danville police are standing with you shoulder to shoulder. We are advocating and working and investigating on your behalf to solve that crime and bring people to justice. So that is our highest priority. So we're not going to release information that could harm that goal. That objective is, it sits ahead of anyone wanting to know information about your case. So we won't. And we were criticized a little bit in this case for not adding or releasing further information. And it just isn't how we do work. We want to work hard for you, and we want to make sure that we do our best job for all of you. And so let's take a look at what we do when we release information. The reason we do it is we want to make sure that we operate in an atmosphere of openness, that we're here and people understand what it is we're doing and why we do it. That's why we hold 2 Citizens Academy each year, and we encourage people to go. And what we're limited by are the legal constraints when we are allowed to produce information and provide it. We do it with the goal of preserving the evidence and not harming the investigation. And then we want to make sure that we're protecting the rights of those that need to have their rights protected. And a very easy case is if it's a sensitive case. If it is a sexual assault or something like that, those cases are very, very tight, and we get a lot of authority not to release those presumed public documents. So we get a lot of ability to protect people's rights and make sure that they can be made whole at the end of an investigation. So we've talked about, in the past, we've talked about I'm going to go this way. So the 3 different stages of a release, and typically you'll see one release at the beginning, or the stages of an investigation. At the beginning of the investigation, you may see a release, and then you'll have the investigation, which we usually don't release any information there. And then possibly at the end, if we've brought that case to conclusion, filed charges, you may see a release of information there. And that's where you'd see the second release. So let's take a look at what that first one may actually look like. We're going to provide the facts of the event as we know them, and we're going to do it in a way that doesn't compromise the investigation. So we're not going to release a lot of specific details that we need to follow up on the case. What you also might see is a public safety message. So if there's an unfolding event in an area, if we know that there are people that we're searching for that may be dangerous, you may have seen us where we've locked schools down and that sort of thing. So you'll see us put that out to say, hey, we've locked this area down, avoid this area, shelter in place. We also might ask for your help. And you see this a lot actually on this show, right? When we put information and say, hey, someone stole from a store. Can you please help us? And so we're going to ask for your help in locating a car or a person. We might use the event as a call to action to say, secure your property. What can you do to prevent from being a victim? We might also have the call to action be to evacuate. And then we might give a policy statement, which really talks about like what laws pertain to the event that we're investigating and what procedures that we follow. So we might provide you kind of an investigative framework for what it is that we're doing. So that is how we work with the community to make sure that we're providing information in a way that will not harm the investigation and achieve the result, which is really to work for the victim in the case and bring this case to a successful conclusion. Now, in that middle time, this is where we ask for a great deal of faith. Now, understand, if you are the victim of the crime, we're going to be communicating back and forth, and we're going to be letting you know, and we're going to be keeping you in the loop, but we're not broadcasting that out to the public because we don't want it to harm the investigation. Now, what do we release if we arrest someone? So if there is a request and someone wants to know the information, what is it that we release? And that's covered by the government code, and it's in our policy, and a link to our policy can be found in the description below. But what you might see in a release is you'll see the full name of the arrestee, the occupation, the physical description, the time, date, location of arrest, the factual circumstances surrounding the arrest, the time and the date of booking, the location the arrestee is being held, the amount of bail, all charges the arrestee is being held on, and the time and manner of release. Manner of release being if the person bailed out, if they were released because they were held in that statutory requirements where they have to be released, or if they were issued a citation and released. And that's similar to a traffic ticket. All right, so that is a quick kind of overview about how we release information and what you might expect from all of us. I hope that really explains I'm trying to go through the notes here, but I hope that really explains what it is that we do, but more importantly, why we may release information in the way that we do, and really know that we are working very, very hard for the victims in that case. I can get up in front of people and say, your Danville police is doing a great job. We're solving 2 times the national average in certain categories. Our crime is very, very low. It's the lowest it's ever been in history over the last 4 years. I mean, I can say all those things, but if you've been the victim of a crime, you're going to want people that work as hard as we do on that case. And so I will make sure that we don't compromise that. All right. So I'm checking the chat. I don't see Sue. You said a small portable opener works great. Fits in my pocket. I'm not making the connection on that one. So Sue, if there's a question, maybe throw a question on there. I'm not building the connection on that one. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to actually go and I'm going to cover. So we had a comment a couple of shows ago, and I want to throw this comment up real quick. It's from Tony, and he had asked, not sure if you see these comments or not, but could you talk about and share what rights we have as responsible gun owners in our own home as it relates to burglar, break-in, or a trespasser in our backyard? So understand this. What we teach when it comes to conflict is we teach the avoid, deny, defend. And so if you live in a community, or you live in an area, or you have a business and you'd like us to come and present on that, that is what we present to businesses and faith groups and staff at schools. It's very similar to run, hide, fight. It's pretty much the same. The reason we teach that is we even know as law enforcement that fighting should be our last option. It's not the first thing that we go to. It's very complicated to go there. And you'll see that when we go over some of the law, and I'm just going to read the law and not offer an opinion because we don't do legal advice, but I'm just simply going to read the jury instructions that a jury would be read in a self-defense case. And the reason I say that is when I read it, you will see that it is very, very complicated. And what I would say is if necessary, and nothing I'm saying should construe that you give up your right to self-defense. That's not what I'm saying. I'm just saying realize that when you're forced to defend yourself, it becomes a very complicated situation. And what we would say is avoid it at all cost. And this is the avoid, deny, defend. So in the avoid category, this is when you're notifying police. Get us out there. Let us know what you say. Try to avoid that situation at all cost. If you're in your home and you're worried about someone coming in your home, what steps can you take today to prevent someone from coming in your home? Having good door locks, having good lighting on your house, having outdoor cameras that alert you, having an alarm system. Those are all things that you can do today that should you be put in that situation, you're better prepared and you're less likely to even be put in that situation. And I'll give kudos to Jerry Kidd. He's one of our past Citizens Academy graduate. He gave me a book called Left of Bang. You can read the book, but it's just a good mental illustration about if we know the negative situation is here, we want to be very, so many steps left of that situation. So if we know the hazard is someone coming in our house and we may have to defend ourselves, well, what can I do 1 step before that, 2 steps before that, 3 steps before that? And let's operate in this area. And so I would really encourage Tony and anyone else that's listening to this, try to avoid the situation, call the police, think about what you can do ahead of time to prevent these situations from happening to begin with. And let's cover it. What I'm going to cover is exactly what is found in the California criminal jury instructions. These are the instructions that when someone is on trial for a crime, a judge will read the jury these instructions, and it's meant to provide instructions to the jury on what they're to consider when determining guilt or not guilty. And so I want to read them to you. You can look these up online. These are publicly available. This isn't some secret thing that we have. And let's see. So we'll go through. So self-defense of another. So this is what I'm going to cover is simple battery. We'll talk about the definition of that, and then we'll cover the self-defense part. So simple battery. So this is what you may think of when you think of a schoolyard fight when you were younger. And this says that the defendant is charged with battery in violation of Penal Code 242. And in order for you to prove that the defendant is guilty of this crime, the people must prove that the defendant willfully and unlawfully touched that person in a harmful or offensive manner, and the defendant, the person accused, did not act in self-defense in defense of someone else or while reasonably disciplining a child. And I know that one gets a little controversial, but we'll hold off on the child part of it. So self-defense of another. So here is what they will read if there is a self-defense assertion. And they would list the crime. In this case, we would say a defense to battery. The defendant is not guilty of those crimes if he or she used force against that person in a lawful or defense of another. The defendant acted in lawful self-defense or defense of another if the defendant reasonably believed that he or she, someone else, or some other party was in imminent danger of suffering bodily injury or was in imminent danger of being touched unlawfully. The defendant reasonably believed that the immediate use of force was necessary to defend against the danger. And this is one of the keys that really gets diced up, and you've probably seen some recent cases in the media where civilians have used force, and this is what has come into play, and the defendant used no more force than was reasonably necessary to defend against the danger. And so I can't, a lot of people want me to provide them a very specific scenario. If someone pushes you, you can, bop them upside the head. It just doesn't work that way. These are complicated, complex situations. What I just read to you is the law. That is what is to be considered when you do use force in self-defense. And so what we would say is really work hard to avoid that but realize that you are not giving up your right to self-defense. So Tony, I know that's probably not the exact precise answer that you wanted, but that is the best that I can do because these scenarios are very complex. We try to think of things in a linear fashion, but there are so many different variables to consider that it becomes really tough to give a very simple answer without taking an even deeper dive. All right, I'm going to check the chat and see if there are any. So Sue says the sound is off and on. Were you guys able to hear me okay on this? No signal. That's not good. All right. Okay, so I'm going to press on. So we've got a couple of comments here. So Chris says, fighting hurts even when you win. I think that's a fair statement. Nobody likes to fight, and so it's best to avoid them. Kimberly says, hi all, I'm in Nashville. So Kim, you must be having a lot of fun. I hope it's not so cold out there. I hope you're having a good time. Nashville seems like a great place to be right now. And then Chris says, does Danville have a program where officers will come out and give advice on anything to increase security in your home? The answer is we do. And we have what's called a SEPTED analysis where we'll send an officer or a staff member out and they'll do a crime prevention through environmental design. And what it is it's how your area is designed. So the trees, the bushes, the lighting, the rest of the landscaping, cameras, physical security, what do you have in place to make your home safer? And so we will go out and do that. You can send an email or a direct message to us via one of the chats, and we will respond to that. Okay, so sounds like I got to check my stream. Looks like I'm getting a pretty good signal, so I'm going to apologize. Anyone that's getting bad or choppy sound, I apologize. Thank you for bringing it up in the chat. I will check and work on that for next time. All right, I'm going to check YouTube, see if there's anything there. I don't see anything there, but as always, if you have questions and you're watching live during the show, please ask them and I'll work to answer them. If it's something you don't want to answer live on the show, you can always just send me an email and I will work on that. We'd like to remind everybody, download that FEMA All Hazards Guide. This is your checklist for those events that don't occur that often, but when they do, they sure can be a problem. So download that. Review the relevant topics with your family and then just chuck it in a drawer. And then sign up for our community warning system. This is at the sheriff's office. There's a link in the description. And then download the Wildfire Preparedness and Evacuation Guide. That is all I have for tonight. Thank you all for joining us live. This is great. I appreciate all of you for coming. And if you have any questions after the show, you can go ahead and shoot me an email and do that. So there is a late question, Celeste Marie. I like how you snuck that one in under the wire. Celeste says, should we buy locks for our back gates? Well, here's what I'll say. Locking a back gate is a personal preference. I personally don't lock my back gate, and that's because we've got service people that come in and they need access to the gate. You can do that. You can put a combination on there. You can provide access. What I've done instead is I use motion lights, I use cameras, and I think that works for me. But it depends on how your environment is. There was a meeting last night that I attended where people said, I have an open space on this side, or I have this, or this is what my property looks like. And I love those questions because what they're saying is, I identify that my specific site is a little unique and it's different than other people's. How do I manage that? And Celeste, so that is exactly a good question that you can ask if we come out and do a SEPTED site survey. But some people, what they'll do is maybe if they're going on vacation, they'll actually choose to lock those gates, right? But if it's maybe during the week, normal operations, then they'll keep them unlocked. And so some people go with locked all the time, sometimes locked. And then in my case, I don't lock them and I use other means to provide another layer of protection. Okay. Did you have another question, Celeste? I see sorry for the last second question. Oh no. Celeste asks the questions all the time. That is the best thing about this program is this isn't just me talking to a camera. This is an opportunity for us to engage. This is why we do coffee with a cop. This is why we do recess with the cops with the kiddos in town. So this is exactly what it's for. Sue Sue provides some good pointers. Bad guys can jump over the gate fence. So here's what I'll say, and this kind of ties into Celeste's comment. If you do lock your fence and someone has to jump it to get over, that's a good signal to the walker, the jogger, the baby stroller, to the people in your neighborhood to go, that's unusual. I should call the police because somebody shouldn't jump my neighbor's fence. That's an unusual thing to do. And so that's why we would lock that. All right. So it looks like that is all. And so that means that we are 1010, which means we are off duty, but we are always 10-8 and in service to all of you. Have a good night, Danville. Bye.